Hello and welcome. My name is Dave Knox. I'm the Executive Director at banddirector.com. This afternoon, an interview with John Whitwell. It's an honor and a privilege to be broadcasting live from Michigan State University School of Music. With us this afternoon is Director of Bands Doug Bianchi from Wayne State University in Detroit, retired Director of Bands here at Michigan State University John Whitwell, and the current Band Director Kevin Sedatole. Welcome, gentlemen, and thank you for being here.
Okay, first thing I'd like to do is welcome Kevin to Michigan. He comes from Texas, and he's been around here a little bit, but I definitely think he brought the weather with him. Anyway, welcome. We'd like to start this afternoon discussing what directors have to put up with when they start possibly their first job, whether you're a veteran going into a new position or a young band director just starting out at your first position. What are the things you need to look for? And we thought this was a great opportunity. John here is leaving his position at MSU, which he's held since 1993, and Kevin's about ready to take over a position. Whether you're a college band director or just taking over the local middle school, there are many similarities. Whether you're a seasoned veteran or starting out, when you have a new band program, there's things you need to be aware of to be successful in that program. We have a unique situation here. John's leaving his position at MSU since he's been here since '93. Kevin's going to be taking it over. And we're going to discuss a little bit about what each of them are going to be up against in this transition period. John, you want to start?
Well, I think initially one needs to determine what old inertia exists and what parts of that are particularly important and attractive and need to be nourished and sustained. And there are always going to be issues, I think, of change and newness when there's a new leader. And I think one of the things we all have to do is a change of culture in certain areas. And it is a culture change because whether we intend to develop a certain culture or not, we do over the time and we settle into that culture. And I think figuring out what needs to be sustained and nourished from the past, the best of old tradition, and what new things need to be implemented are important. And it doesn't matter if it's our very first job or if it's a new director arriving at Michigan State.
What we'd like to do to start our conversation off is deal with those issues that an incoming band director has to deal with when they take the new job. So, whether you're a seasoned veteran or you're new, what are some of the problems you're going to come across? And what are some of the things in the back of your mind when you take over that new job? John is, of course, as I mentioned, the band director here since '93, leading the position. So we'll tap his wisdom, and then Kevin might give us some insights as to what he thinks he needs to accomplish when he gets here. John?
Well, I think in every job, whether it's our first job at the middle school or being the new director of bands at Michigan State, we try to figure out what things are most important, old inertia items, dealing with the alumni, providing the right experience for the student, and possibly what items we would change over time, because essentially one of the things we all do is change the culture in certain ways to make it the way we think it should be. That's part of what we need to do. It's very important to not just accept the way things have been, but to question. And the more experience we have, of course, the easier that becomes. But changing the culture, I remember when I went to Ann Arbor, Huron in 1975 and succeeded Edward Downing, as he was giving me his keys to the Huron Band Kingdom and going out the door, I said, "Ed, what profound wisdom do you have for me?" And he said, thought just a second, he said, "Don't move too much furniture too quickly." And I think what he was saying, don't make too many noticeable, profound changes too quickly. Be cautious about what you decide to change. So sometimes I think young conductors especially make change for the sake of making change, make themselves more comfortable. And really adjusting to what's there, learning what's there, might mean that after a year we might not make those changes because what's there might be better than what we're accustomed to.
Well, you mentioned tapping into the old inertia. So if there's good energy there, you need to have that it is, and you can't always find that out right now in leadership. But then again, you mentioned basically, but to thy own self be true. So, Kevin, what do you see as a problem coming from a new director? If indeed you see something that you'd like to do.
I have the distinct advantage that this is my second time following John in the position.
Right.
Because I took on the job of director of bands in an interim year at Stephen F. Austin when John left that school, got to Michigan State. And there's nothing to change really because he's left it in such great shape. There's only things to add to. I guess I've been at 4 or 5 different places now, and I've learned that you can't go in and make wholesale changes because you haven't gained the student's trust yet, and that takes a while, especially when they're so connected to the person who's your predecessor. You have to give it time, and it will come. And hopefully, any addition I would make would be with John's blessing. We're cut of the same cloth, so I know that it would be. It's just I hope to take things and move them just a little bit farther. He makes it so easy for somebody to do that.
So you mentioned about leaders, and in some ways, in band we have a cult of personality, and I know for a fact that I've known individuals that's taken over pretty iffy band programs and had a hard time getting their vision and all the good things they wanted to accomplish done simply because there was a sense of loyalty to that personality. Even if as a director, maybe the students didn't quite respect him, they did respect him as a person. And you had mentioned trust, and maybe you could capitalize on that. Earning that trust, and again, when we're talking about culture, we can't help but take the box and change the culture of that room, even if we haven't done a thing.
I think Kevin said it exactly right. It just takes time. You can't, it's not like an on-off switch. You can go into your first rehearsal and say, all right, I'm new, this is how we're going to do this, and everyone automatically jumps on board. It's a rheostat, and you do a little bit every day, and it's like developing a long-term relationship. There are some conductors who are really good at doing the weekend all-state honor band sort of thing, and have more difficulty sustaining a long-term relationship with an ensemble. There are some who are better with the long-term and not so good in the short-term. So a new school or a new situation, it begins as a short-term relationship, but I'm trying to develop the long-term. So you can't speed up the process. It takes a commencement or two in some situations where some students, and it doesn't mean that we write them off. We try to give those seniors and the parents the best possible experience every day. If you thought today was a good rehearsal, wait till you come back tomorrow. I'm just going to knock your socks off. And that's all you can do is the next rehearsal. If we could do a whole year's worth of rehearsals today, we try to do that, but you just can't do it. It just takes time and building trust and credibility. It's a long-term relationship.
Yeah, and you're not going to win over every kid either. And if that's your goal, then you're going to be unsuccessful. You'll beat yourself up while you're doing that. You can't do that.
I wonder if we could talk about when you get into a situation, there's always those people that are very well-meaning. Seniors that want to help you. Give you all the information. Or even if you're in a middle school, like 8th or 9th graders, they've been there, done that. They've got the whole inside job, as well as those parents that are going to, well, we've always done it. I wonder if we can maybe address those things. Well, I was going to say any. I do. Even by way of an anecdote of something you can say, where beware or signs of how to get your information and who gets your information.
Well, I think one of the things you don't want to do is to belittle people's efforts, well-intentioned in trying to assist you. So you may be thinking, this is the last thing I want to hear. But you can say, I appreciate your interest, I know it's well-intentioned, and I will certainly consider that.
So being a good leader, being a good listener. might be
and in thinking about what they said, the other thing about developing a long-term relationship is you do it one student at a time. It's not a global political mass media sort of effort. You develop a long-term relationship with an ensemble, one person at a time. So being interested in students in and out of rehearsal, seeing them in the hallway, seeing them at the mall, going to their athletic events, saying, I saw you at church in the orchestra Sunday. That was a terrific job you did. I think learning students' names is the first and most basic way to start, rather than you. No, not you. No, the other two, you. Is not the same as saying, Thomas, we need such and such. I've seen that so many times. Larry Livingston, former dean of the School of Music at USC, is a magnificent all-state clinician, and he'll stop a rehearsal and say, you, last chair viola, what is your name? Well, everyone assumes it's a negative moment, because, and that's a whole other discussion, why we would assume it would be negative. He'd say, would you stand up and tell us your name, and where do you go to high school, what's the name of your conductor? And then he'll say, I want everybody to look at Susan, the violist. She has the best eye contact of any entire orchestra. Every time I look at her, she's looking back at me, and she's responding to my nonverbal communication. It would be magnificent if everybody had Susan's eye contact. Well, then he goes back and gives a downbeat, and everyone is looking at him. I mean, so the fact, asking people their name and then memorizing so many names a day. I remember driving home from Ann Arbor when I started there, but still commuting from Jackson, having 3x5 cards that I made up. My wife helped me. It was in chair order, so I could see the students and in the rehearsal, and I had glasses, red hair, short, plays short, whatever. And I would try to remember and just review those as often as I could. So driving in the car, I don't know if it was completely safe or not, but I would and then using their names in rehearsal. Susan, that was terrific. Well, you start using a few people's names around the room, and they don't know that you've worked at it really hard, or that you don't know everybody's name. But I do that when I do all state groups or whatever. I think it's personal.
Well, being a good communicator. I know that when I do these honors bands now, many times they have their name turned right over the stand.
Yes.
And it's just a beautiful way to make that immediate contact.
Right.
So, Kevin, you want to chime in?
Well, I just think everything John just said, it just shows that you care about the students. And if you know something about their personal lives that you can bring to a rehearsal, or if you see them outside and ask them about their test, or, it makes them feel like they're just not a member of your ensemble, that you're, that it's your laboratory. There's a connection there, and it's worked for me with the the big marching band programs that I've been around, even with jaded college students that you don't think would really care much. They really do care, and especially little freshmen that in a 340-piece band that they never thought that you would ever know their name or even care to know their name. Just saying their name in a hallway, greeting them outside of the band area is really meaningful to them.
Yeah, because I think as band directors we have to know that in our jobs, at least in the public schools, you can do your math assignments and turn in your papers and no one knows what you're doing. If you want to show someone your report card, then go ahead. You're going to A, B, C, D. Music, everyone knows what you're doing, and you're very vulnerable. So if you can make those students feel so at home that when you do call them out for missing a note or something, it's okay. He likes me. I just have to do my job, and I have to do it better, or something's not right. Let's move on to repertoire, because we know that to be successful in a program, you really need to pick music, and the right music for your ensemble, and quality music if you're ever hope to attain any kind of program of substance. So maybe let's move a little more into that area, a little more conductor talk, possibly.
Well, I know you're going to have to go pretty soon, so why don't you start?
Don't buy the first piece that's on the table that's the most accessible at conventions. That'd be the best advice I can give to somebody, because it's usually junk food that won't sustain you, and it's what will sell the quickest, and that's why it's there. And it's music that your students will like instantly without ever having to think about it. That also means it's music without depth, without development, without consideration or thought given to the compositional process. It just works. So stay away.
Think twice before we...
Sure. Don't go a few stacks back, because that's probably where the better music is. Or talk to people who you trust. Ask them about repertoire if you don't know, if you don't have a vast knowledge of it, if you're young teachers trying to learn but don't really know what quality literature would be. Ask people. I've never found anybody that's told me, I'm not going to talk to you about this on the phone or have a coffee over at a convention or whatever. To me, music teachers are so willing to share their knowledge, especially with young folks who seem like they care about what they're doing and want to grow as teachers. There's just an abundance of people that will help you.
I'd just like to interject for the younger directors watching. Yes, there's a great camaraderie within the profession, and most of us are starved to talk to someone about it, because you're in your building, and you're the only music teacher sometimes in that building. And if someone just calls you up and says, "I'd like to talk about Lincolnshire Post, you got any ideas?" Oh, gosh.
Find
yeah, meet me afterwards.
Sure.
We'll have dinner, and I'll
Right.
talk your ear out.
Find a mentor. That's
Yeah, right.
that's in most everything you do. Find a mentor. But as a young teacher, and it's not just about repertoire; it's about every part of teaching. The most successful people I've seen as older teachers had a great mentor person, whether it's your supervising student teacher or your first job, you're an assistant with somebody who's experienced. And so there are a lot of different ways to gain knowledge, but you have to take the step to do it.
Now, I wouldn't know how to answer this question if someone asked me, so I'm going to ask John the question. Okay, sometimes students will say to me, well, Mr. Bianchi, how do I know if a piece has depth? How do I know if it has potential for student growth? And how do I know it's going to be good for my program? I mean, how do I know these questions when you talk this way? And, well, that's a question I'm going to put to you. How do you know? Is there a secret to it?
No, there's not a secret. I think especially when we're young, we want to believe that the state lists and what people play at festivals and contests, that must be the good stuff. And it's not necessarily true. In fact, it's usually not true. It means there's a lot of new things on there that people think they might want to play, fashionable names of composers that are popular. And as Kevin said, there's a lot of junk food on all of the lists. So I think it takes further examination, asking people whom you trust to say, who are the great composers that write for middle school today? And who are some composers that we would stay away from? I think that's a fair question to ask of a mentor. I see a lot of great pieces on lists from earlier generations that are ignored. Frank Erickson's music is always going to be of high quality, and it's always going to be appropriate for young students. the mistake that I think we make is that we look for music as young teachers that's going to excite the students, where we don't have to invest in the process. All we do is drop the baton and the music creates energy. That music is usually not of great quality. And we have to be invested ourselves in studying, and then we have to invest with the students in saying, in so many words, I'm extending my credibility through this piece. And the more credibility we have with students, the more they're going to buy into something that's not immediately attractive to them. I used to tell students there's lots of different kinds of music. There's music for the fingers and the toes, and we like that the best. That's music that we don't have to invest a lot of intellect, a lot of study, a lot of musicality into. It is what it is, and it's shallow and immediately satisfying. But long term, there's not any growth that happens with this music. There's music for the soul, for the heart, soft, slow, expressive music, and we really have to invest in that, especially when we're younger, because it's not immediately attractive. It doesn't create its own energy. We have to breathe life into it. There's also music for the intellect, where a composer writes techniques that are outside our experience. Maybe it's an aleatoric piece, or maybe it's a Schwantner piece where his notation system is totally outside our experience. And you see conductors open that score, do a nervous laughter, put it down, and walk on to something that's inside their experience. So if selecting repertoire is the single most important thing we do for our students and for our own personal growth, and having a well-balanced diet of fingers, toes, soul, intellect, all of that, because that is our curriculum. That's how we teach music education on different pieces that we select.
So I like that you said you extend your credibility, because you put yourself out there as an artist, as a musician, where there is that possibility of failure. Just like your students have the possibility of failing playing a passage. You're in the same sphere as actually they are in each rehearsal.
Well, and at a school like Michigan State at this level, we make mistakes too. I mean, we may commission a new piece. Sure. And so we go to play this piece, and we've extended our credibility through this music, and the students look at us and say, "You blew this one." They don't say it, but we expend a little bit of credibility, political capital,
right,
in that process, and it's part of being at this level. Is I think we do play more new music. Although I didn't do as much new music in the last 6 or 8 years as I did before that. I got tired of extending my credibility, or maybe I was running out of credibility with the students and had exhausted my political capital. But
it's something that must be done.
Well, it is, but it's all a matter of balance. And if one thinks about what kind of concert do I like to attend, what kind of programming do I like to hear? I love new music, but I don't want to go to an entire concert where I didn't get it. Where I think I need to hear that again. But if there's one well-crafted new piece, and maybe the conductor even explains it to us, in the mixture of a great concerto, a great classic Holst von William Granger piece, a Hindeman symphony, it's well constructed so that one piece, maybe no one in the audience really got it, and a lot of them didn't really like it, but they liked the concept. So it's a matter of balance, I think, for each of us, for ourselves, and what we bring to our students, and then what we choose to bring to the audience.
Now, repertoire would, of course, lead us right into how can we as conductors work on our technique. And I would say that I suppose if you took over a band that wasn't ready to go where you wanted to go, there would be nothing wrong with rehearsing pieces you've never performed for a while, just to get them through there. But how can a conductor continue to work on his technique throughout his career and make sure that when he goes into those other worlds, there's no chance of success.
Yeah.
I mean, besides opening up the Schwantner score and saying, no, I don't think so.
When
What makes you open it up and stick to it?
When you say technique, do you mean their actual technique?
Rehearsal technique and, the stick. Because I think that's a thing we ignore all the time. After a while, you're like, well, I had conducting class. I got to get rehearsal.
To me, one of the things I admire the most are seasoned music educators who you will see at these conducting symposiums that have sprung up all over the country, that have been teaching for 20 years or more, and they're there to refine their skills as a conductor, and not so much as a conductor, but as a musician. It says a lot about what they want to do for their students, because they're trying to get better. And we all know that we get in certain habits over many years of teaching, and if you don't ever look at yourself by videotape or DVD or whatever the case may be, we all get into habits that we don't even realize, and that could be stopping the progress of our ensembles, or getting in the way at least. And maybe we have great ensembles, but they could be so much better if we refine our skills as conductors. And so when older people or more experienced people go back to these things, it just, to me, it says a lot, because they're trying to develop themselves and become better teachers and conductors. And there's no class system in these things, I don't think. Everybody's welcome. It's all about paying your money and going and learning from people who we would consider are the great conductors, the great teachers of conductors, or maybe they're just fine conductors to watch and learn from.
And I would like to say that, not to interrupt, but in judging district and state band festivals, I don't think that I've heard a performance that couldn't be improved by a better conductor.
Sure.
I think we'd like to say, I got the 2 because of this, that, and the other thing, but sometimes that rating is there because the conductor was limited, and sometimes that just first class, the first division rating was because who stood on the box and knew how to make that music. But then that could even be improved by, again, just better spitting.
And sometimes it's not even about the physical movement, it's about how you open your ears up and listen, and sometimes not conducting and being able to focus in on where the music is happening, what the problems might be. But we all know when we stand on the box, we sometimes put these,
Right. And that opening of heart, mind, soul, like you mentioned earlier. But that would go along with a little bit of trust. Maybe you could tell us the story. I don't mean to put you on the spot.
I'm going to have to slip out, so I'm going to say goodbye.
Oh, it's a good
guys.
story if you haven't heard it.
I
No, he knows all my
I probably have heard it. So.
Anyway,
Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah.
and best of luck this year.
Thank you.
You had found the secret to conducting the third movement of the picture posing. And I wonder if you might share that with our viewers.
Well, I was teaching in Ann Arbor in my last year, 81, and we were going to play at the Midwest Clinic in December of 1980. And we were doing Lincolnshire Posey, and I had rehearsed the first 17 measures and the end of the third movement outside of rehearsal in the practice room during the lunch hour. Because I thought, well, the whole band doesn't need to sit while we rehearse these 4 soloists. And it was going very well. So the week of the Midwest, I thought it's time to bring this into the rehearsal. And I brought it in, and we started on the third movement, and 4 soloists fell apart, which had never happened, even in the early going in the practice room. And I didn't want to overreact, but I was panicked. I mean, we're less than a few days away from going public in Chicago, and we can't do the beginning of the third movement. So I said, not to worry, we'll meet again during the lunch hour tomorrow. Thank you. We'll skip over to 18 where the clarinets come in, and we'll just go right on. So the next day in the practice room, I asked the 4 soloists, what do you think happened? And none of them would say anything. They were just all looking at their shoes, like, except one oboe player, Linda Gilbert, who now plays in the Houston Ballet Orchestra. She was is a phenomenal musician and incredibly mature. And I could tell that she had an idea, but was at first reluctant to share. And I said, Linda, what do you think? She said, no, I said, no, I think you do. Do you have a thought that would, because I don't know.
Right.
I was shocked because it had gone so well here. And she said, well, what I think happened in the practice room here, you don't really conduct us. It's just like a little quartet. You sort of get us started and you nod and you direct balance and whatever.
Nuance.
But you don't really conduct patterns here. You're seated like right now in a chair. And what I think happened yesterday was the trailing solos, the two soloists that are 2 8 notes behind, were confused by seeing the beat pattern, which doesn't line up with what they hear.
Right.
Because we had initially rehearsed that all together, all 4 soloists playing at the same time, so they knew exactly what they were doing and it was the same thing, and then we'd separated it. So I just made a joke. I said, so you're saying because I conducted it, it fell apart? And she said, no. I said, yeah, and everybody laughed. So we rehearsed it, and I didn't conduct. I just got them started and just stopped this time, and it was flawless. So that day, after lunch, we went to rehearsal, and I told the whole symphony band, I said, I think Linda suggests that because I conducted it yesterday, it fell apart. And she was embarrassed, and everybody laughed. So I said, this is how we're going to do this. I'm going to get this group started, then I'm going to start this group, and at the end of the first 5/8 bar, I'm just going to withdraw and let them play. And then a measure before 18, the 3/4 bar, I'll join them to prepare you for 18. And it was impeccable. And so we did the same thing at the end, and it worked great. And then about 2 days before the Midwest, I woke up in the middle of the night with my band director paranoia.
I was going to ask you, because you'd have to have great courage to talk. Well, I did in rehearsal, and
I didn't even think about it, except that in the middle of the night, you're thinking about all these things and trying to go back to sleep. And I thought, everybody at the Midwest is going to say, what a great band. It's too bad he couldn't conduct the third movement. And I was genuinely worried about that. And I thought, but it's how we're doing it is for this group at this time, it feels correct. Those guys don't need to be conducted. So we went to the Midwest. We did Lincolnshire. They played beautifully. John Painter was the master of ceremonies for that concert. And he went out to introduce Bob Reynolds, who was our guest conductor, right after Lincolnshire closing. And he went to the microphone and he said, before I introduce the next guest conductor, I want to say to this audience, if you don't learn anything else this year at the Midwest, we all just learned how to conduct the third movement of Lincolnshire. And I never got to tell John how much that meant to me, right? Because I was absolutely convinced that there'd be some people who thought I couldn't conduct it. So I had just trained players to do it, and then
But it does lead us to how important trust is and knowing your ensemble. And like you said, it was right for that group.
Yeah. The goal of music education is to create musically independent people. And sometimes we stay in their way. We play too large a role, a controlling role, in not allowing them to become completely independent. And the analogy that I think of now is if every conductor has a vacuum between themselves and their ensemble. Most of us, when we're younger, and our teachers, the person on the podium filled the vacuum. We toned, tuned, style, nuanced, balanced them, and they were passive in the process. And I think now that if every time I withdraw from the vacuum a little bit and give the players some space, and I have to know how much space to give them. I can't completely withdraw and say, I don't do tuning, I don't do styling, I don't do balance. That's your job, so good luck. I have to give them the tools and the knowledge and know how much space to let them fill. And when they're comfortable with that, give them more. I think that fifth graders can do a lot more than we give them space to do.
Right.
They have great ears. They know if something's in or out of tune. We need to just give them the tools to know how to bend pitches and to see if they're correct or not, and then let them start doing it. It's like, I think of the band conductors, in my experience, we have this huge tool belt that we develop throughout our years of teaching, and we can fix anything. I can go into any band room in the world and I know how to make it better. I have all these tools. But by me acquiring more and bigger tools and not sharing them with my students, they remain passive. And it's one of the things I even notice at the university level is that you go to recitals and chamber recitals where the students are in control and they know what to do. They're moving and breathing, and the eye contact they have with each other is perfect. And then you come to a band or orchestra rehearsal and they're passive. Just by sitting in a large ensemble, they become more passive. So I think the more trust, the more space we can give them with the knowledge and the success of how to do that, and then leading them on from there. I think it'd be great if on every concert we had one piece that we didn't conduct, where the group just had to take over.
I like the analogy with the tool belt, because I know that as a young director, that's the thing I had to get over. I was sure I could fix everything. Well, I'm sure right now I can fix anything. But that's not your job. Right. And like you can,
but it's not the goal.
But it's not the goal.
Yeah.
Do we have time for one more John and I were talking beforehand, and he told this great story about Leonard Falcone. And I wonder if we might share that story, only because we are very fortunate and blessed to be music educators. But we, if you've been teaching for 30 years, it's not 1 year of experience 30 times. It's 30 years of experience, 40, 50 years. Conductors, musicians, we're be long-lived because we're pretty ornery, but we have this great spiritual vista to explore. You can really enhance and make your life a wonderful experience. And John was relating a story, Leonard Falcone, former director of bands here, at a concert where, you want to take it?
It was December of 1981 at the Midwest Clinic, and I hadn't seen Mr. Falcone in a few years. I had moved to Texas, and I just hadn't seen him. And when he came out to conduct the Vandercook Band on their Midwest program, it took my breath away because he had aged a lot, and he was a lot shorter.
About how old was he at the time?
Leonard was born, I think, in 1899. I'm embarrassed at this moment. April 5th, I think, 1899. So he would have been 82.
So definitely an older guy.
Yeah, but he was a lot shorter than I remembered him being, because he was stooped and he was on a walker, and it hurt me. My initial reaction was, I didn't want to see this. And two young men from the Vandercook Band had to help him get off his walker onto the podium, and he's hanging onto the music stand with both hands. And my first reaction as a young mid-30s guy was, why are you doing this? I mean, you don't have to do this anymore.
Right.
Why don't you go to Florida, sit by the pool, read a good book? Why are you in Chicago? It's zero outside, and I just completely didn't get it at my age. And the piece he conducted was a transcription that his older brother Nicholas had done. Nicholas was the director of bands at the University of Michigan before Dr. Ravelli, and Leonard came here. And there's a whole great movie waiting to be done on the Falcone brothers. But
Maybe some producer out of Hollywood's watching it.
there you go.
You can get some of the rights for your retirement.
Sure. But he finally grabbed the baton in the right hand, still holding on the conductor's stand, and he started conducting. And within 8 measures, I'm going to say, he got younger and taller and younger and taller. He let go with the left hand, and he was 35 again. And he conducted, it was the Leonard of old. And I didn't know how to react. I was seeing it, but I couldn't take it in. And then he got through, he put the stick down, and he grabbed onto the conductor's stand again, and he aged back to where you've been when he started. And the more I thought about that, and as I get older now, if someone had told Leonard Falcone when he retired from Michigan State in 1967, you can never give another downbeat. You've retired, you must walk away from this and not make music anymore. Students, I think he would have been dead years before that. I think the opportunity to bathe one's artistry and humanity in the sonority and in the humanity that we have when we make music with great young students and the glory that is music making keeps us young.
Right.
And the young man came and got him, and he got back on his walker and went off. And I've seen that happen in so many people now that I get it. He was living for the next moment that he could make music, and it was sustaining him between those experiences. There's a little book that I bought 20 years ago or so, and it's Why Conductors Live Well into Their 80s and Beyond.
Well, I need to get a copy of that.
No, you don't. It's not, because they didn't get it. They didn't get it. They said it was completely cardiovascular.
Right.
They called it arm jogging.
Okay.
And it's emotional. It's spiritual. It's a daily cleansing of the soul from the war and hunger and poverty and whatever evil exists in the world. It doesn't exist when you're making music. It just, you just are in a special place with special people doing something. Just imagine if the whole world at noon every day would stop and have an hour band rehearsal.
Oh man.
It would be a different place than we now experience. So that's what was sustaining Leonard, was the joy, even just for a few minutes, with somebody else's group. But when it's your own group, it's even more special.
Well, it makes you believe that all those myths and stories from centuries past they're true.
Absolutely.
But you're right, though. It takes you a long time to get it, I think.
I think we have to get to a certain age to get past the third clarinets are still out of tune.
They're right.
And you know what? They're always going to be
Yeah,
out of tune.
But, that'll be fine. You can still overcome.
Absolutely.
Well, I hope this was an interesting experience for people watching out there. I hope you got something out of it. If you'd like to email banddirector.com with your comments, we'd appreciate it. And again, I'd like to thank John Whitwell.
It's a real
Wonderful
pleasure.
to talk to
Thank
you.
you.
And best of luck on your retirement, though. I think I'm going to be around when you're 90 conducting that one. Maybe you won't be on a walker, but I'm sure it's going to be a brilliant performance.
I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in this afternoon for this wonderful experience to talk to respected educators and conductors. Doug Bianchi, thank you very much.
Welcome.
John Whitwell, it was a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Please log on to banddirector.com for a recorded. If you happen to miss a few minutes of this afternoon, we'll have a full recording tape that is accessible through the site. Log on to banddirector.com, and if you have any questions or suggestions or emails for future events, please email us at info@banddirector.com. Thank you again for tuning in this afternoon, and I'll see you next time.